Today, we will be looking at some of the most horrific crimes that have ever occurred within the state of Texas. Most of these cases, unfortunately, remain unsolved. However, make sure to stay to the end of this video, as we will also be discussing the recent case of Shamaiya Hall, a former mother of 5 who chose to viciously attack her own family just last week, and in doing so, took the lives of 3 innocent children. But before we get to that, as always, let's start with the earliest crime on this list: the murder of Carolyn Montgomery. Carolyn Montgomery was a 28-year-old cocktail waitress who lived in North Dallas. In August of 1971, she was found dead on her living room floor with kitchen knives protruding from her abdomen and throat. Her 6-year-old son was sleeping in his room at the time of the murder. The brutality of the crime shocked the local community. Even more alarming was the fact that the perpetrator was never caught, leaving Montgomery's family to grieve without any closure. The investigation into her murder was extensive, but despite many leads, no one was ever arrested or charged with the crime. In the years since Montgomery's murder, her case has remained a mystery. There have been occasional leads and tips, but none have ever panned out. The case remains open, and the Dallas Police Department has said that they will continue to investigate as long as they have leads to follow. Montgomery's family have never given up hope of finding her killer, and they continue to advocate for justice for their loved one. Courtney Clayton. Courtney Clayton was a 7-year-old girl living in Stanford, a small town in West Texas. In September 1988, she begged her father to let her go to the store, which was just a block away, to buy a drink. Her father watched her walk to the store and go inside to make her purchase. When her older brother Ryan went in to retrieve her, she was nowhere to be found. Her body was discovered 6 months later in a field 50 miles away. The loss of such a young life in such a brutal manner rocked the tight-knit community, and the case remains unsolved to this day. The investigation into Courtney's disappearance and murder was extensive, but ultimately, no one was ever charged with the crime. The case has haunted the people of Stanford for decades, and many continue to wonder who could have committed this crime. The local police department have vowed to keep the case open and to continue investigating any leads that come their way. The Clayton family has never given up hope, and they continue to raise awareness about the case in the hopes that someone will eventually come forward. Cheryl Henry and Henry Atkinson. Their love story was one of passion and tragedy. The young couple, deeply in love, had their lives cut short in August of 1990. Their bodies were found in a secluded area of Houston known as Lover's Lane, and the brutality of their deaths shook the community to its core. Atkinson had been tied to a tree, and his throat was slashed so deeply that he was nearly decapitated. The scene was so gruesome that it left investigators horrified. Henry's naked body was discovered buried under a pile of boards, and it was evident that the killer had sexually assaulted her before taking her life. The 4 partially deflated balloons tied to a nearby tree, and the $20 bill found next to her body were eerie clues that left detectives completely perplexed. Despite a long and drawn-out investigation, the case still remains unsolved, and the families of the victims are still waiting for justice. Chandra Payton. Chandra Payton's tragic death devastated her family and shocked the community of Addison, Texas. She was a bright college student who worked hard to support herself and her family, but her life was cut short in July 1992. Payton was found stabbed to death inside the clothing boutique where she worked, and it was evident that robbery was the motive. Her mother later recalled the heartbreak and pain of losing her daughter, and the difficulty of coming to terms with the senseless violence that took her life. The fact that Payton was not even supposed to be working that day made the tragedy even harder to bear. Despite police having a person of interest, Payton's killer remains at large, leaving her family and the community with a deep sense of unease and fear. Emily Jeanette Garcia. Emily Garcia's story is one of horror and tragedy. A young girl just 15 years old, Emily had her whole life ahead of her, but it was cruelly cut short in February 1993. On that day, she boarded a city bus to go to a health services appointment to determine her due date for her baby, but she never made it to her destination. Instead, she was kidnapped and held captive for 12 days, during which time she was subjected to unimaginable horrors. Emily was raped, beaten, and strangled, and her body was eventually discovered on an old stretch of Texas highway in Canyon Lake. Her death shook the community to its core, and the senseless violence that took her life is still felt today. Emily's family were left to grapple with the tragedy and the pain of losing a loved one in such a brutal and senseless way. However, after decades of effort to bring her killer to justice, police finally arrested 50-year-old Thomas Ray Galindo at his home in Comal County on Friday, September the 10th, 2021. After almost 30 years, the family of Emily Jeanette Garcia are just happy that they can put this behind them. Amber Hagerman. Amber Hagerman's tragic case has left a lasting impact on the community of Arlington and beyond. The horrifying incident occurred on a seemingly ordinary afternoon, when Amber and her brother decided to take a bike ride to an abandoned grocery store. However, what should have been an innocent adventure turned into a nightmare when a monster in a pickup truck snatched Amber from her bike. Despite her screams and the neighbours' quick call to the police, Amber was gone without a trace. 4 days later, her body was discovered at the bottom of a creek bed, sexually assaulted and murdered. The shock and grief of Amber's death was felt across the nation, and her abduction led to the creation of the Amber Alert System that has saved countless lives in the years since her tragic passing. Despite the passage of time, Amber's case still remains unsolved, and her family continues to seek justice for their beloved daughter and sister. Maria Coroner. The gruesome discovery of Maria Coroner's decapitated body in April of 2010 shook the tight-knit community of Louisville to its core. The mother of 6 had been brutally murdered, allegedly by her own husband, whose white pickup truck was found nearby with 2 bloody chainsaws on the tailgate. The heinous crime left many wondering how someone could commit such a brutal act, and the subsequent investigation left more questions than answers. Meanwhile, Maria's family and friends still struggle to come to terms with the loss of a woman who brought joy and light into their lives. Detectives at the crime scene said 49-year-old Jose Fernando Coroner dismembered his 44-year-old wife, Maria, and left her body in the street in front of their home in Louisville, Texas. Jose Coroner is still wanted on a charge of murder to this day, as unfortunately, it is assumed that he fled to Mexico after the murder and has friends or family keeping him hidden. But hopefully, one day soon, he will slip up, and Maria's family will finally get the justice that they deserve. Misty Lowder. The disappearance of Misty Lowder has left a huge mark on the community of Pilot Point, with residents still grappling with the unsettling mystery surrounding her vanishing. Misty's life was plagued by addiction, a struggle that is all too common in small towns across America. But despite her challenges, those who knew Misty describe her as a warm and caring person, who always had a smile on her face. The day of her disappearance, Misty's family and friends became worried when she failed to show up for an important appointment. When they went to her apartment to check on her, they found no signs of a struggle or forced entry. It was as if Misty had vanished into thin air. The police were notified and an extensive search was conducted, but it yielded no results. As days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, the rumours began to circulate. Some people whispered about Misty's drug connections and the dangerous people she was associated with. Others speculated about a possible abduction or even foul play. One particularly chilling theory involved a local wood chipper, which some believed had been used to dispose of Misty's body. Despite the many theories and rumours, the truth behind Misty's disappearance remains elusive. Law enforcement officials have combed through the woods and scoured the area around Pilot Point, but no evidence has ever been found. Misty's family and friends continue to hold out hope that she will one day return, but as the years go by, that hope becomes increasingly faint. Shade Schuler. Shade Schuler was a young transgender woman who tragically lost her life in 2015. She was only 22 years old when her decomposed body was discovered in a vacant field near the 5600 block of Riverside Drive. The discovery of Shade's remains sparked a media frenzy, with local news reports highlighting her story as the 13th reported case of a transgender person being killed that year. Shade was known by her chosen name, Ms. Shade, and was last seen wearing a blue and white cotton tube top with straps, blue shorts and black Nike flip-flops. Her body was found wearing a black wig, sunglasses and fake fingernails adorned with diamond studs and pink tips, which were a clear reflection of her vibrant personality and love for fashion. Shade's passing was a devastating loss for the transgender community, which was already facing discrimination, violence, and a lack of basic human rights. Her death raised questions about the safety and well-being of transgender people, and highlighted the challenges that they face daily. Many advocates and activists continue to fight for greater recognition, acceptance, and protection of transgender individuals in society. Nevertheless, despite extensive investigations into Shade's death, the cause of her passing is still unknown. However, her legacy has lived on, inspiring countless individuals to speak out against violence and injustice. Her story has become a symbol of hope and resilience in the local area, reminding us that even in the face of adversity, we can all work towards creating a better and more inclusive world for all. Shamaiya Hall. Shamaiya Dayon Hall, a 25-year-old woman, is presently being held in custody at an Ellis County detention center, where she is facing 3 counts of capital murder for an incident on Friday the 3rd of March. This is a very serious charge, and it could potentially result in the death penalty if she is convicted. According to the Ellis County Sheriff's Office, Hall's 5 children were living with a relative in temporary custody of Child Protective Services at a residence on Harris Street in Italy, Texas. Last Friday, a caseworker from the Child Protective Services paid a visit to the home and discovered that for reasons unknown, Shamaiya was present in the property, which was against the terms of custody. After conducting an assessment, the caseworker determined that it was necessary to remove the children from the premises. The CPS caseworker immediately contacted 911 around 4 p.m. to request assistance with the situation. A law enforcement officer was dispatched to the scene and upon arrival discovered that all 5 children had been stabbed. Sadly, 3 of the children, a 6-year-old boy and twin 5-year-olds, a boy and a girl, died as a result of their injuries. The remaining 2 children, a 4-year-old boy and a 13-month-old girl, were critically injured, but luckily they survived the attack. It remains unclear why Hall was present at the home on Friday, and if this factored into the CPS caseworker's decision to remove the children. Investigators are likely scrutinising every detail of the events that led up to this tragic incident, in order to piece together what actually happened. Court records reveal that this is not Hall's first run-in with the law, as in 2017 she was charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon after threatening a man with a knife. Then, in 2020, she pled guilty to assault causing bodily injury after biting another person. Interestingly, Hall's twin sister, Troy Shea Hall, was charged with murder in 2021 for allegedly stabbing her own 7-year-old daughter to death in South Dallas. Court documents indicate that Troy Shea was deemed unfit to stand trial and was subsequently committed to an inpatient mental health facility. The tragic case surrounding Shamaiya Hall is truly chilling, and yet we are still awaiting further news about her trial that may bring further twists to this already harrowing story. As previously mentioned, this is a very recent case, and therefore new details are being released every day. So if you're interested in this story, make sure to subscribe, as we will be following up later this week to provide further updates. As for the other true crime cases mentioned, if you would like us to continue making these types of videos, please let us know by leaving a like. But until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.